in this work folder, you have some reading to do that will illustrate the connections technique. All right. So there are plenty of techniques that you can sort of categorize and label and use to think to use to help you write essays. And you could, if you study this and get into this, I suppose you can email me and I can give you a list of these. But the idea is there are approaches you can take to the way that you think about things and the way that you think about topics that can really be fruitful for you in terms of how to produce, right, a text that has legitimate length and that creates interest, maintains it, and rewards it. Um, and we can look at these techniques one by one, and there might be 15 to 20. I would say I know about 20. Um, and we can give them names and we can talk about them. We can look at sample pieces and you can practice them, and there you go. Now, we're not going to do that in this course, but I will talk about one, right? And one is called the connections technique, right? So connections. And the way connections works, right, is that you have two things that you know about, X and Y or whatever. And the two things seem to be actually different. But because you know about them and you've thought about them and maybe you've experienced a little bit of both or whatnot, you realize that they are actually connected in some way. If you look at it from a certain angle, or if you think of it in a certain way, you can see that really the two are connected in the same way. Um, so you might have something like cars, okay, and you might have something like um, you know mountain climbing, and the notion would be, well, how are those two connected? And um, you might find a couple of connections. I'm not saying that there's only one. In fact, I'm literally coming up with this example as I'm sitting here doing this video, which I'm thinking, boy, I should have thought about this before, but I guess I'm a little too lazy to start the video again. But whatever. The point is, cars and mountains. How are these two, mountain climbing? How are these two connected? And you might say, well, you get the steel or whatnot that you make the car comes from the ore that might be in a mountain, and I'm like, yeah, and I see that, right? Like if you were just to ask someone, how are cars and mountains connected, um, maybe that's would be one of the more reasonable and possible answers, but uh, I want you to ask you to consider. Let me throw some details in here. Mountain climbing. Uh, it's risky, but it's not, right. It's 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 challenging, but if you go to many parks that promote hiking through their mountains or whatnot, you're often going to find that they have the trails published and marked out, and many times they have rails, or they have, if you're actually mountain climbing with ropes, they have um, the pinions already put into the rock, and it's challenging. You need to know what you're doing, but it is still also structured and even supervised to some extent, and I want to say paved, but the notion is prepared for you, so that this is how the path goes, and this is where you should turn here, and this is when you need to uh, don't go into that fork, but go into this direction, and the path up the mountain is marked out for you. So there's a sense where it's still going to be challenging, exhilarating, but it's also going to be more or less kind of safe, right? So cars, how are they like that? Well, if you think about it, you get in a car and you go 60 miles an hour in a 1-ton vehicle. Physics is going to tell you you've got a lot of momentum there. You've got a collection of force that, if it were to stop suddenly, could kill you, could crumple the steel like you wouldn't believe it. So you think how hard it is to crumple steel, and how easy it is to dent your car, or to get that car, if you do have a head-on crash, heaven forbid, but to crush that chassis, and to all that energy and power, that's there in that momentum, that potential energy, that turns into the kinetic energy that, boom, just it's dangerous. It's dangerous is what I'm getting at. Okay. Yet it's also structured. You are somewhat protected, right? But there's a sense where we both can forget the mystery of it if we live with it every day, right? And it takes something kind of wild to bring back the notion of this really is a dangerous thing. We've just gotten used to it. And so sometimes you can watch someone that is actually climbing a mountain without any ropes at all. Now, this is called free soloing. You can take a quick pause here and look online and, check this out and see some of the clips. In fact, there's a famous event that happened with a fellow named Alex Honnold. I'm getting his last name wrong. But he climbed El Capitan without any ropes, and there's a documentary on it called Free Solo, and I would highly recommend that if you can get a copy of it online, or get it through your library, you can see this, right? So is this one reason people love speed? I'm not saying everybody. I should qualify that, but there is a sense where when you start going faster and faster and faster in a car, there's something that happens to you as a driver. It at least happens to me. There's the sense of danger, the sense of adrenaline, the sense of fear, if you will, the sense of having to try to be in the zone because you need to control this vehicle. And this is only 80, 90 to 100 miles an hour, which I've done on the interstates, as I travel. But, there's always been a fascination with speed. And I wonder if you were to write an essay as to what I'm talking about, if this is a way that you can combine cars with mountains, right? And let me just make a quick timeout here. Would that be an essay worth writing? Well, I don't know. The point here is, can you create interest, maintain it, reward it? If when you practice this and when you get creative enough, you can do this with with all sorts of things that initially seem boring. That's the craft of an artist, is to try to get you to see or interact with something that you have become accustomed to. You're not able anymore to see it in the richness that is there, because to you it is now boring, in the sense of, oh, it's just a car, it's just whatever. But I would say, sure, if you're going to write an essay on this, there's a lot of potential here. It just depends on what you want to do with it. It could fall flat on its face. It could really be something good. It doesn't have to be incredible or great. It just needs to create interest, maintain it, and reward it. Now, part of here would be maintaining that interest, and rewarding it. You're going to have to go deeper and try to uncover something that's going to kind of surprise your reader. But it shouldn't be too much of a stretch. Sometimes you try to create the surprise or create this interest in such a way that, it's kind of ridiculous at the end. What I was doing with cars and mountain climbing, I'm like, well, at least there's some sort of logic there. I don't know how far I want to stretch it, because I might fall apart, right? But that's the technique of connection. Is the connection works when the two things that you are trying to connect don't seem to have any connection at all. Obviously, if they seem to be connected in the first place, you don't need to be writing an essay about it, because the connection is probably a given already in the mind of the audience. It's probably not going to create a lot of interest, maintain it, or reward it if the connection is obvious, right? So college, one thing, intelligence, another thing. They do seem to be connected, right? So why would you write an essay, maintaining or promoting this notion that college increases your intelligence? Now, how about not going to college and intelligence? I don't know what the word for it is, but it's happening more and more, where high school graduates are just not going to college, right? But here's what I'm getting at. What if dropping out of college is equated with intelligence? Now, how are you going to do it? Okay, how are you going to connect the two and say they're connected, right? And that's going to be a little tougher, right? Um, you might say, well, there's just so many college graduates with so much debt now that, in fact, when you go to apply for a job and you show that you took a year to travel, or you took a year to try to start a business, or you took a year or two to be involved in a structured reading or watching path that you put together. I mean, you did something that you designed, that you were in control of for 1 year out of high school while you lived with your parents or whatever. And then you went into the workforce. Somebody looking at that is saying, this person has got some self-initiative. This person has some time management skills. This person can be self-directed. This person doesn't need to feel like they have to do what the culture is doing, right? So that could be viewed as a very strong plus, as you're trying to get into the workforce. Unfortunately, we have a lot of non-critical hiring, non-critical thinking hiring. Is what I mean is that most of the way people hire now is just like, well, let's have some filters going, and one of the filters is you got to be a college graduate, which I don't think is a very smart thing to do, because it's not creative as a tool to find the next good workers and leaders for your company, right? It's lazy. In fact, it's lazy filtering, right? That's just nothing new under the sun, if you will. That approach has been happening for decades. Why don't we think of something new to see if we can distinguish the people that have initiative, drive, energy, risk-taking ability, things like that, right? So that's maybe how you can connect dropping out of college with intelligence, and that would be a surprise. You see what I'm saying? Because college is so much plug and play now, and it's a for someone that doesn't like that and says, I'm getting out of here, that might say something about the way they're an independent thinker. I don't know. Don't be offended by what I'm saying here. I'm fully aware that we're all in college and I'm teaching it, right? And I went through college. So I'm just trying to show you how this connection technique works. You see what I'm saying? It's gotta be a connection that is not obvious. If it's obvious, why even bother with the essay? And so when you look at the writing that is in the work folders, right, you might what I want you to do is I want you to just look at the two things that the authors are trying to connect and ask yourself, do you see a connection? Did you ever think these two things can be connected? And then as you read, see how they try to make the connection. Now these pieces are coming from a book that had a lot of success, and then I think that they tried to overdo it. They went from Freakonomics to Super Freakonomics to the board game to seminars to all sorts of stuff, because they realized that there was a demand out there to try to learn how to think this way, right? And you don't necessarily have to. I don't know. It became a little micro industry in its own realm. I feel like if you just stay curious and if you just stay involved with texts, you can develop a lot of these techniques yourself. It's just a matter of determining how much time you're going to give to this thing called literacy, and whether or not you recognize it as an essential part of yourself. And my personal opinion is this: if you've got memory and can recognize the presence and can dream of the future, you're already thinking in story. If you use words and can appreciate things like music and jokes, you're already layering the words with aesthetic. And you may as well just realize that whether you like it or not, this is your lingua franca. This is the token you trade in. Okay, to be human is to be literate. So, you're kind of trapped. And at this point, you can make a choice not to develop yourself or to develop yourself. And if you're going to develop yourself, one of the elements that has to be there is a growth in literacy. And when that's the case, then what you are doing is you're becoming more and more aware how much of your day is involved with dealing with texts. And as you begin to recognize the thing that is a text, the thing that is delivering a message, the thing that is not only functional but also aesthetic, the thing that is using symbols in a code, just like I'm using the English language here, the thing that is being transmitted by a fixed format, just as this video is being recorded onto the circuitry of the memory in a fixed format, and then being provided displaced in other platforms so that you can replay it, so that a mass audience can watch it. By that I mean it's just someone other than me, and it can be copied. All of those things are markers of text. So think of all the things that you are involved with that are texts. All right, there are many, many different types. And the more that you can recognize this, the more you can start thinking about how they work and what you can do with them. It's like juggling, okay? And by the way, that's why I'm so lenient with my grading, because if this really is like juggling for the people that are seriously trying to do it versus the ones that are just trying to turn in assignments and pass the class, but if you really feel like you're growing in literacy, you have to have a safe space to try to juggle, which means that you can't be penalized if you're trying to juggle 4 balls and you have a really hard time doing it and these balls keep on falling. So you're never going to get better with this just by producing something and letting someone else fix it for you, okay? The old style revision from the teacher doesn't work. You have to dig it out yourself if it's going to last. Just like anything else. You have to own it. You have to pull it apart. You have to put it back together again. And then you have to experiment with this to see if it works, see if it didn't, okay? You do that with so many things already. Why would you not do this with your writing? Why in the world would you let it be passive, turn in your stuff, expect me to tell you how to fix it, and then let you do it? I would be doing 2 things. I would be doing you a disservice, and I would be losing my own self-respect. So that I'm not going to do that. I care for writing too much to do that. This sort of thing is what I do to try to see if there's a spark in you, to see if it's going to push you in that direction long term. Okay. All right. I better quit before I do any more strange activities here. But I hope, take a look at the readings. All you have to do is read them. I just want you to watch how these authors are working the connection technique with elements that do not appear to be connected in the first place. By the end of the essay, you're going to be like, wow, I didn't see that coming. Okay, now that is the mark of a good connections essay. Thank you for watching.